having much of a conversation, or I would have a heck of a time, disseminating this information to you, because you can see it's very involved. We're talking about layers and layers and layers of stuff, and it's all interconnected. So if I have to constantly interrupt that to talk about commercial sponsorship or products, services, it's very hard. That's one of the things I don't like about, especially about regular terrestrial radio. You spend, I think, at least 20 minutes out of every hour, at least, is commercials. That's another reason I will listen to the streaming or the archive of a show, because it's just so much easier not to have to deal with all the commercials. All right, so we were talking about not just the United States, but humanity in general moving out, branching out. I don't think it's really our idea. Not that we couldn't do it or shouldn't do it. It's the problem is that we have been manipulated behind the scenes by what appears to be, most people are familiar with the gray aliens. However, there's also these Nordic-looking aliens that look exactly like us. Turns out both of those groups are being manipulated by another group from outside this galaxy. In other words, so the verdants, the way that is just a term. I don't know if they really even call themselves that. But this particular book I'm telling you about, Alien Mind, you can access it in my library at unicusmagazine.com. Click on library, scroll down. It's one of the last books as far as that section where you can actually see the covers of the books. You scroll down there and you'll see it. And it's free. Those are just free PDFs. The bottom line is this. There's all different levels of manipulations. I've said this many times publicly. We are essentially pawns of the archons. And it's all part of a 9-dimensional chess game that's going on. And it's not just a physical presence. There's this extra dimensional aspect or component that most people are unaware of. But the level of manipulation, the hidden so-called hidden hand or hidden many hands that are, covert activity is real. That's not a theory. That's proven. And the agendas are multiple that are being played out here. So even like the Greys and some of these Nordics that we see, they are pawns of this particular agenda of the verdant species from outside the galaxy. But guess what? According to this book, Alien Mind, even the verdants are being played by some other group. Now, to me, this, as I say, the fish stinks or rots from the head down. Who started all this? Okay, from our limited understanding, I would have to say that the rebellion or the war in heaven started with Lucifer in the court of Orion, at least as far as the nonsense that goes on here in this galaxy. And in case you didn't know it, to make things even more complicated, the reason the Milky Way is the size it is because it's absorbed smaller galaxies. They're called dwarf galaxies, although they're still huge. I mean, compared to, like a Milky Way is fairly large. And again, it's because it has absorbed, merged with smaller galaxies over time. We are currently in the process, we being the Milky Way, is already gravitationally locked with the Andromeda galaxy, which is I think it's around the same size. I could be wrong, but it's big. It's big. So at some point, now astronomers say it's billion years away, and don't worry about it. But the bottom line is we're already locked and we're moving towards each other. There's this dance that goes on when galaxies they don't exactly collide. They do this like ballet thing where they spiral around each other and eventually merge. And yeah, there's some destruction, but ultimately what happens is you get this incredible super galaxy, mega galaxy, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be extraordinary. And it will take, relatively speaking, for us, because we have such short lives, it's going to happen, well, it's going to appear to take a long, long, long time, but on a galactic scale, it's really not. Everything's relative when you look at it that way. Why is that important? Well, because that means the changes are upon us. I told you this entire solar system is already in a very different region of space than it was maybe like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's changing, and naturally, as it should. But I mean, it's the energy levels have increased dramatically on this planet, and I do believe some of the waves of energy that are washing over us through our solar system right now, altering our consciousness and our DNA, etc., and the planetary environment. That's probably directly due to the merger, this gradual merging of the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy. I know people are going to dispute that, but it's fine. That's just my opinion, okay? I don't see, look, if you have two massive bodies in space like that are already moving towards each other at a very high rate of speed because of gravity or whatever forces are doing that, of course it has to have some impact or effect. Has to. So, but then there's this other stuff going on, as I say. You know, if it was just our idea and there really was no other life on these other worlds, including the moon and Mars, then I don't see where it would be a big deal. But I told you, like when the pioneers came across so-called wilderness into Indian territory, they were trespassing, you know, and they weren't very polite about it, by the way, and it led to a lot of conflicts between the Native American people and these so-called pioneers. And I'm sure that's what a lot of people are going to call themselves, pioneers of the new frontier. I coined that a while ago for Unicus magazine. That was a subhead that I put out there for a while, because I thought we were going into new territory there as far as a magazine was concerned. I mean, we're still the only magazine that's ever been designed directly for earthbound extraterrestrials. That means the ones that are here. They're here covertly. They've been here for a long time. You know, it's never not been somebody's colony. Or, in other words, there's a lot of competition out there between these various groups. It isn't just all, you know, let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya. There's a lot going on there, you know, between these. And the fact that it remains, officially we can't even get any kind of admission. This whole thing about disclosure, that was the other thing. That was the other email I need to briefly touch on. I'm not a fan of To the Stars, the Academy, To the Stars, or whatever it's called. To the Stars Academy, not a fan because those guys, everybody except Tom DeLonge appears to be like CIA operative. And I told you yesterday, I don't hold them in very high regard. It's not everybody there is a criminal, but they've been involved in so much clandestine criminal activity, supposedly for national security reasons. It just makes my head spin. Really not good. Really not good. So why am I bringing that up? Because most of you are not old enough to remember or have studied this enough to know that there was something out of Washington, D.C., a group called the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena. And in this particular article from Gordon Lohr, it's an excerpt from a book called something about the CIA. Oh, sorry. It's called, the book's called Flying Saucers from Beyond the Earth, a UFO Researcher's Odyssey. This particular chapter is an excerpt called The CIA Connection, and specifically it talks about the NICAP, also called NICAP, in Washington, D.C., being infiltrated by the CIA. Why? Well, because they wanted to control the information about UFOs and extraterrestrials, and so they had people that it wasn't difficult, by the way. This was like I said, National Investigative Committee on Aerial Phenomena was supposed to be a civilian agency, and yet it was much like To the Stars Academy. You'd think it's a civilian agency, but come on, it's apparently you've got all these CIA people running around, and the same was true. This was back in the 60s, late 50s, I think, when NICAP actually came around. So, yeah, and actually one of the first directors of NICAP was the first director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and that was Rear Admiral Hillenkotter. So, and then you had Major Donald Kehoe, Marine officer, and he was speaking publicly a lot and getting into trouble with, like the media was only willing to let him talk about it up to a point. So, yeah, I'm just bringing that up because we're not supposed to know about these things, and that's not for our benefit, not even close. It's to serve this agenda, essentially to keep us pawns. So we'll just go along with whatever comes up here. All right, I'm scanning through this particular book. I told you, Alien Mind. And most people, like I said, are aware of the Greys, thinking that they're the ones who cut the deal, when in fact they're just pawns themselves, which is a problem. It's a huge problem. I don't know how to solve it, but I'm just telling you that is a problem that we should at least think about. It says here, for example, millions have seen large formations of non-human objects passing behind the clouds in 60 minutes. Yeah, I saw that. That was interesting. I mean, we reported that in the magazine. So things have changed fairly recently, only recently have things changed so that we can discuss this publicly, alleged evidence for the existence of actual living extraterrestrials. And that's a good thing. It's a start. And this is, according to the late Jim Mars, he wrote, most telling is the established fact that the U.S. government has denied the existence of UFOs and any interest in that issue, while internal documents made public through the years have shown that a very real, serious interest has and continues to exist. No kidding. This is preliminary. Preliminary stuff. Don't need this. I'm gonna get to the good thing here, and I forget where it was. But some of the technology, if you want to understand the physics of how gravity is controlled, and ultimately how it's about controlling waveforms, essentially. And the same is true for telepathy or mind control. That's all about controlling waves, brain waves. And obviously we're being observed. They can read, that was the other thing I told you. They can read our thoughts at a distance, whether we like it or not. Unless you have some sort of shielding, I don't know. I'm sure some people think they can do that. I have my own method, but I'd rather not talk about it because I don't want to blow it for myself. I'm not sure it works for everybody. In other words, I think if you really are concerned about it, you'll figure out a way. Or you could just write to me. Maybe we could, I'll give you a clue about what I'm doing, how I figured it out. What did Colonel Corso said something here. Yeah, so, some people think the Greys are, androids. And according to this particular researcher, they are actual beings that have been gradually manipulated over time. One of the other things that they said here was that in this book was that there's a distinction between sexual and non-sexual beings throughout the galaxies, and that